And turning our attention over to the New York Times now. The newspaper has recently published an article claiming RT is sowing disinformation on 5G cell phone technology. It says that we're exaggerating the health hazards, but the New York Times itself is not exactly a neutral party in this debate. So joining us to break it all down, RT correspondent Dan Cohen. Dan, there's obviously some sort of conflict of interest here between the New York Times and Verizon, right?
Yeah, Manila, a conflict of interest is a huge understatement. I mean, Verizon actually pays the New York Times. The New York Times does actual advertisements for Verizon. Here's one where we see the New York Times paid for and posted by Verizon. So you'd think, this would automatically disqualify the New York Times from reporting on Verizon, but not in today's, brave new world. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg. Look at Carlos Slim is one of the largest shareholders of the New York Times. For a period, he was the largest shareholder. Now, this is a Mexican billionaire who made billions of dollars on telecom and is pushing for 5G in the U.S. and Mexico. Then you have, on the New York Times board of directors, you have a woman named Doreen Tobin, who was vice president of Verizon and worked in the telecom industry for 25 years. She's still on the board of directors for a telecom company called Eris International. So a Verizon executive, former Verizon executive, on the board of directors for the New York Times. Another huge conflict of interest. You have Ajit Pai, the head of the FCC, which is supposed to be regulating 5G technology, wireless technology.
Industry.
Exactly. This is a former Verizon lawyer. So, the Fox is totally taken over the henhouse.
The New York Times is clearly in bed with a lot of people on the higher ups, the higher ranks at the New York Times. What about this claim that the WHO, World Health Organization, I believe you have some disputing evidence against what they're claiming in their article?
Exactly. The New York Times, I'm going to quote them, says virtually all the data contradicts the dire alarms, according to public officials, including those at the World Health Organization. Now, what does the World Health Organization actually say? Says the WHO's International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified radiofrequency electromagnetic fields, in other words, cell phone radiation, as possibly carcinogenic to humans, meaning it might cause cancer.
Yeah, you don't have to be a scientist to read that last line and know what it means. And what about these sources that they're citing on their article? I mean, these are kind of some questionable people.
Well, the New York Times quotes a guy named Ryan Fox, who was, he spent 15 years at the National Security Agency. He was a computer analyst in the United States Army, and he now works for a company called New Knowledge. Now, that might be familiar to some of our viewers. If you remember, last year it came out that New Knowledge ran what it called an elaborate false flag operation in the 2017 special Senate race. And the
New York Times themselves reported on it.
Exactly, but
as
still
kind of this bust on New Knowledge.
Exactly, but still treats New Knowledge as, a reliable source. So maybe it's reliable for what they're trying to accomplish. And then you have Molly McHugh, who worked at the neoconservative American Enterprise Institute, which was one of the architects of the war on Iraq, which is, of course, turned out to be a total disaster. She worked as a lobbyist. She's registered as a foreign agent for the United Democratic Party of Moldova and the United National Movement of Georgia. So what her expertise is on 5G, not exactly clear, but for some reason, the New York Times decided to quote her, as an expert.
So a lot of very questionable and conflicting information. Thank you for breaking that all down for us. As always, I know you're going to keep your ear to the ground on this because it's right in your wheelhouse. As always, Dan Cohen, thank you so much for breaking it down for us.
Thanks, Manila.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.